Alright everyone, we are jumping into the lab here. We've talked about SharePoint and file collaboration and OneDrive here, and we're going to just go straight into it, alright? So first we're going to start off with a overview here of the use cases and the different scenarios that we can play around with here inside of the Office 365 client. So we're going to focus on the user's experience for right now, then we'll focus over into the admin side so we can secure this. So with that being said, let's start off here. As always, we log into the portal here. So login.microsoftonline.com, and then we type in our information that we used. Now, we are going to jump in here and you will see, now you may not see these, or you may, depending on your scenario there, but these are actually OneDrives. We did test around with this just a tiny bit before. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to go, if you have OneDrive over here, which you may, but probably not, if we go up here to the waffle menu at the top, and then we click on all apps. We see OneDrive's there too, but I just want to click on all apps. And you'll see here's all of the apps that we have assigned to our users here. So we are going to go and scroll down to OneDrive. So it's going to open up our OneDrive site. Now, if you look at the top here, this is all URL based, and remember what I said here, where we have the name of the tenant. So this is going to be important. So pspalloway-my.sharepoint.com/personal. So this is showing me here, and you can see it's .my-my. So that actually shows that it is a my site or a personal OneDrive. So these are personals, as we say, and we have the username here, which is essentially the user principal name, as you see, and it's gotten rid of any characters that are bad in a URL. You can't put @ symbols and things like that in there. It just doesn't work, nor can you put dots in this instance here, because it will ruin the entire thing. So just looking at it, we have layouts, and then we don't really care too much about this beyond layouts there, because those are all just web parts and such. Not worried about those. Now, you may have a document in here. You may have this Defender ATP onboarding package. If you did, worked through that in the lab that we did previously. Not a big deal if you don't. We're obviously not going to use them, so we don't really care. So what we're going to do here is I'm just a user here, and I want to create a new document. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to go hit new, and I have the ability to create lots of different things. Create new folders. I can have a subfolder and subsections and all of that. But I just want to create the budget. We're gonna beat that dead horse there for the Excel budget, so we are going to continue going on with it here. So I create a new one, and it automatically gets created as book, which I'm not the biggest fan of, because that means I actually have to come over here and right click on these little dots here, and we have to rename it. And we're going to call this budget. Rename it. So now it says budget.xls. Do a refresh roux over here, and we see budget.xls in the top. Now, looking at this here, this is what's referred to as Office Online. Now, this is a full-fledged version of Office, but it is just a web version of Office. I'll be honest with you, it does, well, everything that the version on your computer can do, but it has the ability to essentially kind of keep it to the web portal. There's a couple reasons why we want to do this. One is for ease of use. The other one is when we are looking at, I call them shared PCs or maybe kiosk PCs, where multiple people can log into the computer. But the device itself isn't necessarily registered to anybody. Office 365 until recently never played well with that. So one of the things I always recommend here is just to use Office Online. I think it's a great one, and we can do lots of different things on it. So again, just looking at this here, this is not an Office course, so I'm not teaching anything on there, but we're just going to do, budget. We're going to do, accounting. We're going to do HR, IT, and engineering. So put your information that you want over here. Okay, so I'm creating the framework here. You know what? I am going to, we will insert a row here. How much do you need? And we are doing the simplest of simple. So this is pretty much what we need. Hey, here's the departments, and here is how much do you need. Okay, simple enough. Now you notice that as I'm typing and as I'm doing, we're seeing saves. All right, now I don't have to do anything. If I go to File, save is not an option, but save as is. We'll get to that here in just a second. But up here, these are pretty typical things that we would see inside of the Office client, of course. But coming up under here, we have everything that we would see before. File just takes us, as we saw there. Home, insert, these are the standard Excel things that we would see. So if we come here to just kind of stand on home, that's where I generally do. You'll notice that we have several things up here as well. We have this little editing. We can do viewing, and we can open up in the desktop app. We're going to get to that here in just a second. But for now, we're just working on it, and we can do our Excel stuff as we want to the cows come home. You know, that's completely up to us. Now, here as it stands, if I close out of it, we have some things, and we'll see over here we have these columns. Now, these columns aren't as granular as we can get inside of SharePoint, which I'll show you. But inside of OneDrive here, we have budget, and we can see right here, hey, here's the budget. We can see it was modified a few seconds ago. We can see who it was modified by. We can see the size of it, and we can see the sharing. We're going to get to the sharing here in just a second. So here's the budget. All right, cool. What are some things that we can look at? If we right-click on it or click on these the little side ellipses here, we can see open. Again, we'll get to that in just a second. Open browser or app. We can preview it, share it, copy link, manage access, download, print, delete. Of course, we can see all of these on here. Automate. This is an interesting one. So we have Power Automate, which we're not going to get a ton into, but we can set up flows around Power Automate where we want to copy file as a PDF in OneDrive for business, or if we want to create a flow. Now, if I click Create a Flow, we're going to see over here that we have very simple flows. These are available. Request my manager's approval for the selected file, or start manager approval for the selected file. Get signature on selected file. There's a lot of things that we can do here, of course. There's so many of them that are on here. Microsoft is making a huge push into the automation field with Power Automate. Microsoft's a software company, so of course it makes sense. Hey, post this message to Yammer. You know, hey, what are we doing here? Request feedback from your manager. A lot of things that we can do. These are all automation pieces, which we are not really going to focus too much. That's an entire separate course. But looking at everything we do have on here, we can also look at the version history. So as we see on here, we have 3 major iterations on it. It started off here, and you can see here's the dates. It was in 1204, 1204, and then 1206. We have 3 major iterations on it. So if I click on it, it'll open up. Now it opens up inside of Word, or actually inside of Excel, but inside of the desktop app for Excel. We're going to look at that here, but we're not going to do that right at this minute. So we're going to close this out. It's going to yell at us. As you can hear, there's like a million things going on because I want to save that for a different iteration here. But what we can do here is we can delete the version. We can come here, and you can see it's added to it over time. Cool. We'll look at these here in just a second, but that's really it for I want to kind of highlight to it. Now, we can see the size of the file, which again, it's not really that big of a deal, but again, sometimes when we have like, I don't know, a couple gig file or something, you just want to see like, holy Toledo, that's huge. Okay, well, we can come up here, we can sort ascending, descending by lots of different things. I'm not going to go into a huge list on this one here. This one is not that difficult, and I think you should be able to pick up a lot on it. We can see activity, which is really nice as well. I can come in here and I can see, all right, well, here's today, here's, you know, last month, here's everything that we have done today. We created a new file, we renamed it, you edit it, and we created documents, which is this over here, which I'll get to in time. And then we have created Office scripts. So if we come over here and we see Office scripts, so there's nothing in here, but these are essentially going to be a repository for the Power Automate that we clicked on there. So nothing there, but not a big deal. So we have the budget, and we click on it, we open it up, and we see, all right, cool, there's stuff in here. All right, at this point here, I need to get this document in the hands of Geddy Lee. So Geddy Lee is the accounting manager, and he needs to enter how much money he needs for the upcoming budget. So how do I do this? Well, of course, I can certainly go with an antiquated way of downloading this if I want and then sending it over to him. That is incredibly inefficient. We don't want to do that. And you'll see up at the top here we have lots of different things that we can do. So I can copy the link. Here, anyone with the link? We're going to get to that here in just a second. But let's just go to share. We just want to make this as simple as possible. I'm going to open up the budget here, and we're going to share. Now there's 100 ways to share, and they all do the same thing, but there's 100 ways that you can do shares. So we're going to be inside the document here, and you see we have this little share button. And we want to share this with somebody. If you see on here, we will have lots of different ways that we can share as long as permission settings. Okay, anyone with the link. This is what's referred to as an anonymous link. Well, anonymous links aren't necessarily that bad They're not my favorite, but as long as users understand when and where to use them, we'll get onto that when it comes to the administrator side. We can do people inside the organization, so anybody inside of the organization with the link can access it. People with existing access, which is currently nobody, or specific. So it's really all about how granular you want this to get. Do we want lots of people to be able to access this link? Yeah, potentially, because again, I'm trying to get input from lots of different departments, so sure, maybe I want to do people inside of the organization with the link. Maybe. Do I want to do the anonymous one? I'm not the biggest fan of anonymous because it does not actually, anybody can do it. There's no checks on it. Anybody who has a link can immediately jump in there and add it. Not the biggest fan of doing that, but it is an option. So in this instance here, I want to do specific people, okay? And then we have here is other settings. Do we want them to edit or view? Well, obviously we want them to edit because again, in this instance here, we want them to collaborate inside of here. So we hit apply. Now we got to put people that you specify. So in here, you can see we have all of our people, that we've worked with here. We're going to do Getty Lee. So we're just going to type in Getty, and there we go. So what's going to happen here is that Getty is going to get I'll go ahead and send. So Getty is going to get a email. So I have over here on my other screen, which I'm going to bring up here. So I have logged in over here with Getty Lee, and it's right here. So we have some stuff, which I don't really care too much about those. Matt Alloway has shared budget with you. So I can click on it here, and I can open it up. Again, that's fine. That's not necessarily the easiest way of doing it. But I want to show you here of, go ahead and close that out. We don't care about the privacy right now. But I want to show you the idea here of co-authoring. So as soon as I jump in here, you can see that if I go up to the top, I see Matt Alloway is in. Remember, I'm looking from Getty's side. This is from my side over here. Now, on this one here, I can see that Matt is right here. But Getty here, and I'm just going to type it into one, I need $1 million. And you see over here that that is what I've typed in, and you can see that, hey, Getty is working right here, and I could see essentially vice versa where people are doing it. Now I can have a whole bunch of people inside of here editing a document at one point in time. So, Getty's coming in here, he's making his changes, he's doing his stuff to it. Great. All right, Getty said, all right, I need $1 million. I'm good. So we're going to go ahead and exit, close it out, and let's just say on accident, I shift deleted this email. It is purged from my organization. Oh no, I need that again. Can you give me access to that again? Well, that's not how we can do that, of course. But again, why would I want to do that? That's embarrassing. I'm like, I accidentally deleted that. Can you get that back for me? Well, we don't have to do that. So if we come over here and we go to OneDrive from Getty's side, Getty will now have an option up here that says shared. So here's Getty's folder. He's got nothing in it. But if I come over here to shared, we will see this is what has been shared to me. And you can see shared by, which is me. Matt Alloway has shared to this user. And if I need to get back to it here, I can jump into it. It's that easy. So we're working together on collaborating on this document. So we've added, and we've certainly added information into it, but what if we need to get other people added to it? And we just got to continue to add people to it. So let's just say now we need to get Neil Peart in here. We need to get some of the other people in our tenant inside of this particular document. Now, I said this before, and I will say this again. We have to start treading carefully on this. So, because what ends up happening here is on my files, if I start sharing this out to many different people, and I click the little shared, as you see over here, sharing and how is different. So if I click shared, I can see who has access. So if I come in here, I can see people that can do it. If I drop this down, I will see Getty Lee as long as anybody else that I want to do. Now, if let's just say I no longer want Getty Lee to have access to it, I can hit the little X there, and we will, boom, we're yanking Getty's access. Now I come over here to Getty's side and it says, sorry, you don't have access. Now I can request access. Pretty please. And then he requests access. Awaiting approval. So we don't know what happens. But what's going to end up happening for me over here, if I come into my Outlook, and in time, there we go, we'll see it there, Getty Lee, hey, they want access to this. This is what they want. This name came from outside of the organization, but this came from inside of the organization. Look who it came from. No reply, no dash reply at SharePoint Online. So inside of this email here, we can accept or decline it. So just be careful here, because again, this is a common phishing thing. We've talked about that already. But in this instance here, we are going to, okay, you got access to it. We're going to hit accept. And it's going to come up here, and we're going to approve access request. So there we go. Now has edit request. So if we just refresh, I believe. Yeah, there we go. So come over here. Geddy Lee refreshes. There we go. Now we have access to the document again. So again, as you see on here, we're just users. We haven't once had to get IT involved on here. We've gone through a little approval process. We've done some co-authoring and some cool things there. And that's fine. But again, we're starting to look to the point here of how is this really going to be useful in the long term? So let's close out a budget for the time being. Come over here to budget. I'll just give this, I always like to give these a little refresh here from time to time. We can see the last person that modified this is Geddy, and he modified it 3 minutes ago. So if we come over here to the little dots and we go to version history, we'll notice that now we have a version history there where Geddy Lee did. And this is the funny part, is that how did this get smaller? That's kind of weird. I added information to it and it got smaller. That's kind of strange. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes there with SharePoint. We're not going to get too deep into it, but looking at the information on here, okay, that's fine, and we've added stuff, cool. But let's just say on accident, all right, I come in here and I meant to hit print, but I actually go through the double, oops, deleted it. Oh no, I can't delete it. Somebody has it open. Well, that's good. That's my first step there. But I could if I wanted to. Let's just say I go through a tertiary way and I actually still delete it. Oh no, what happened to it? It's gone. Is it gone? Well, this is another wonderful tool inside of SharePoint here. And again, OneDrive is SharePoint. Remember that. Come in here to Recycle Bin. Oh, there it is. And with a simple click of a button, I'll come back over to My Files, we will see. Now, all of the metadata on the file is there. Version histories still retained. All good. The data inside retained. Sharing access, as we see here. Geddy Lee. See, they have access. It's a direct access we've given him, actually, so that's fine. But Geddy Lee still has access, so I didn't have to touch anything. I just had to get it out of there. So what would happen if I were to delete it? Come over to the Recycle Bin, and then, I don't know, delete it again. Okay, it's all gone. It is no longer in my files. It is no longer in my Recycle Bin. However, if you notice this little guy down here, it says check the second stage Recycle Bin. Oh, there it is. Click of a button, restored, it's back, all the metadata, every piece of it, sharing still good, last modified, and all of that is still around. So, looking at all of this here, we have the ability to restore files, and it's actually very easy. But let's just say, like this particular file here, we do want to delete it. It's gone. Got rid of that document. We come over here to the sharing, the Recycle Bin, and we delete that too. Then we come to the second stage Recycle Bin, and we put a little guy in there, and we delete it as well. As it stands, if you permanently delete this document from the second stage Recycle Bin, you won't be able to restore it. So that is gone now, completely gone. That file is gone from the server at all. There's only a couple ways that I can get it back. And it requires essentially administrative rights to be able to do so. There's some other things that I can get back to, but from a user standpoint, I have my Recycle Bin as well as my second stage Recycle Bin. Now, time frames. We have, if I were to just take this right here, and we'll just delete it, and I do nothing with it, okay, it gets deleted, and then a month from now, I'm like, man, what happened to that file? I'm like, what the heck happened to it? And then I'm like, oh gosh, it's in my Recycle Bin. Well, what you'll see here is that from the date deleted, we have 93 days that it will sit in the Recycle Bin. So that's 3 full months it will stay in the Recycle Bin for you to be able to restore. All right. So if you need to restore, and again, even if it's 92 days, or just about to flip the timer on 93 days, we can restore it with full everything with it. And if it jumps in from here, it'll continue going down the kind of the recycle bin there. But 93 days, it will sit in the recycle bins. So consecutively. So it is 93 days here or here. Now, if it could be, I don't know, 45 and 48 here, it doesn't matter. So our ability to restore stuff is actually very, very helpful. Okay, so there's a lot that we can do, and we're going to start getting into this here. But again, let's kind of take a step back and look at it here. We can see shared, these are things that have been shared with me, and I can look up the top here. Here's things that I have shared. Just a good way to come in and see, oh, does that person still need access? Do they need whatever? Maybe, who knows? But again, that's up to the user to determine. And remember, keep in mind, never once have we had to get IT involved on any of this. So there's some other things that I want to show you in here as well. So we have the ability to upload. We can take documents and everything in there, and that's fine. But first, what I want to do here is I want you to, if you don't already have a Microsoft Office on your computer, that's fine. And if you do, we can just, or if you don't have it here, you can download it and you can install it based off of this trial that we have here. Now keep in mind, it's only good for as long as you have the trial, but if you need to, and if you do have the version of Office 365, you can open it up. Now I'm going to open up Word over here. This is so annoying. Move it over here. Well, it's going to say, hey, we're going to activate Office. Now, I'm going to activate this under me. Now, unfortunately, I cannot move it over because it is locked on my screen over there, and as soon as I get an option to, I will show you. Professor.live, and if you see on here, it's essentially just going to have us log in. Okay, and then we just log in as we always do. Oh, that's right. It's out of the way. Duh. Sign in. Now, we may get this. Do not click OK. Do not do that. Okay. What happens here when you do this, when you hit allow my organization to manage my device, this will actually register Azure AD register the device that you are on currently to your tenant. We don't want to do that. So do not do that. And instead click on this no, sign into this app only. So what happens then is we come over here. Now I can bring Word up. Yes, we have our privacy stuff. We open it up. And we see up here that we have it as bound to us. Now it's going to take a little bit of time for that to truly activate because it right now says unlicensed product. So let me close it out and try to activate it. There we go. Okay, so inside it here we have lots of different things. We're going to forget about the team for the time being because we're going to have a whole section around that. So we're going to go ahead and dismiss that. So we come up here and we should see that we have, it should say Microsoft and it should say whatever your name is there, whatever your account is. And you'll see that we have the ability to create a brand new document. Now that's cool, okay? So what this allows us to do is I'm going to go ahead and just close out of this for the time being. and go back to my OneDrive. And I'm going to go up here, go to new. We're going to create a new Word document. This is a document. Cool. Now, what do I want to do here? Well, there's several different things. Remember, I can come up here to the top. I can go to reviewing or viewing. But if I come here to open a desktop app, I'm going to get this little pop-up on here. You'll see Word pops up. And we will see I am in the native version of Word. Now, you'll see up here I have, again, mine. This is a document. We'll see up here autosave is currently turned on. This is cool. And you can see it's saving. I don't have to touch anything. I'm just going to go ahead and close. And we will just go ahead and close this out. And you'll notice that information that I typed in there is saved. So they are synchronized between the two. Now here's the problem. We can actually get catch up here too, by the way. This is another little handy feature where if you have multiple people working on a document, we can see what changes they made. So here's the thing that they made, here's the things that they did, and we can get a nice little catch up, which is helpful. So we have the document here. Now that's fine, but that's a little bit annoying, to be completely honest with you. Remember, we want to make this as easily adopted for a user as possible. So what we do here is, if you have installed the Office client on here, which we go over here, if you installed it via here, one of the things you will have is the OneDrive for Business client. Now there's a lot of things that we can do here, and I'm going to pull mine up. We're going to go to pulling mine up right now. Settings, we're going to add an account. So when you open up OneDrive for Business, see it, we're going to see this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to type in our Alloway, or of course whatever yours is, Pocket Square Professor.live. And we're going to sign in. And this should all look familiar here. Remember, do not sign in, just always sign in to this app only. Do not just hit the big blue button that says OK. We don't want to do that. Okay, so we'll see here your OneDrive folder is here under C drive. And we can change the location if we want. Maybe if we want to put it on like a I don't know, additional hard drive or something just for storage and space and such. But we'll get to those here in a time. We can go ahead and hit next. Get to know your OneDrive. Well, that's cool. We can share files and folders. We'll get all of that stuff here. There's file on demand. These are very important. We'll get to those. Get the mobile app. The mobile app is very helpful. We're not going to really use the mobile app here, but the mobile app is very helpful because you can actually back up your file or your information on your device to OneDrive. More importantly, your pictures, you can back those all up to OneDrive, which is super helpful. But we're just going to go ahead and hit later. So we're going to go ahead and open up my OneDrive folder, and you will see I have, well, a lot. I'm going to bring mine over here. So you'll see I have lots of different ones. I have a personal, I have my lab, I got a bunch of different things on here. But if we come, we have this PSP Alloway. So if I extend that out there, you'll see I have documents. But if I click on it here, here are, come over here to my files, this is a like for like on my device. So as you see on here, I'm going to create a new PowerPoint presentation. You'll see that little icon there. It went a little sync thing, and then it turned green. So if we come over here, we'll notice that now we have presentation up there. So again, coming back. Come back over. Where did it go? There we go. So we see we have presentation here, but you'll see that these have little icons on them. So the OneDrive for Business Sync Client is actually quite a powerful tool here in a modern workspace. So let me show you some of the things you can do. A lot of problems that my customers have, they're like, well, what's the stopping from the users that if they have, 800 gigs of stuff in their OneDrive, that's going to fill up the hard drive. Well, that's not the case. Microsoft actually has a lot. They've done a lot in terms of what we can do on this device here. But what it does is it uses something called files on demand. So by default, the source of truth is always up here in the cloud. And you'll see that we have these little icons right here where they are essentially showing that they're in the cloud. And then we have these green ones, which shows that it is local. So these devices here are nothing more than stubs, if you will. So they exist only in the cloud. But if I need to get to them, for instance, I can just double click on them. You'll see it's got the little sync. It becomes green. And hey, there we go. We got the stuff inside of it. That looks cool. So I'll go ahead and just close that out for the time being here, and you'll notice that that has a little green on it. That means I downloaded that device, or excuse me, that object, and it is available locally on my computer. Now, let's just say I don't use this document over time. What do I want to do with it? Well, I have the ability is if I don't use it for a period of time, it's through a thing called Storage Sense. So Storage Sense is built into Windows 10, and it acts the last time that you access the file. It looks a lot of different things on here. But if we wanted to, we can right-click on it, and you'll notice that we have some new things, especially in this little area right here. We can share, we can look at version history, we can always keep on this device, or we can free up space. So I'm just going to do that. hey, and you may have a little pop-up, mine's on my other screen there, but it's a little pop-up on there that says, hey, Office files save you space. So there we go. I've just freed up space on my hard drive. Now granted, it's one tiny document, so it's not really that much hard drive space, but of course, all of my files are only up there as I use them, and as I stop using them or I don't use them too frequently, it'll automatically remove them from the local computer and keep them in the cloud. So Files on Demand is a powerful feature, and it is always recommended to turn that on. Because again, this stops us from being able to download the entirety of our OneDrive to the local client. We never ever want that, of course. So again, in our local client, as we have on here, we have lots of different things. You know, we have lots of stuff, and I'm just going to try to kind of minimize a lot of this stuff on here just so we can, too much going on right now. So as we see here, we have our information, we got these little icons, we have a little person next to budget. Now, if you recall, if we come over here and we go to share, that file, that budget was shared with somebody. If we come over here, we can see Geddy Lee. So we can see that. So we can share directly from here as well. So we can also check the version history of it, which the version history is over here now. And we can see here's the latest version history. We want to maybe restore this one here. Maybe download, delete it. Maybe we want to look at it. I don't know. What do we want to do here? Well, what did Geddy do? What did we want to do? How do we want to potentially look at it? Let's just say maybe we want to get rid of everything that Geddy did, okay? Because he came in there and he actually screwed a bunch of stuff up. So what we can do here is we can click Restore. And that'll take just a second here. And then if I open up the budget now, which is currently open up in Excel on my other side here, you see over here, now I didn't touch anything on this, but accounting, we got rid of all the stuff that Geddy did. So we just reverted that back, just real quick. Boom, 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 and we were done. I didn't have to touch anything. And again, also, I did not have to get IT involved in any of this. So again, all great stuff that we can do here. We can manage this, we can do it. Now there is also one other thing that we can do. Now, if we can come over to, and you know what I'm going to do here? We're going to taskbar settings. I'm going to show the taskbar on both screens so then you can see both and make it easier here for us. We will there we go. So now we should see okay, now we should see everything. Select which icons appear on the taskbar. Make sure that I get all these up here, of course. So that one's good, that one's good. Okay. So we're going to come up to, I did not actually cancel over that, but that's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the little cloud that exists next to the cloud there. There's a little blue cloud that you should see, and if you hover over it, it should say OneDrive. So when you click on it there, you'll see all the changes that it recently has done, and then there's a little gear at the top. We're going to click on that, and we're going to go to Settings. Settings will bring this up. Okay, and you can see on here, here's the account. Here's the location that we're syncing. All that looks cool. If we come over here to Settings, we can set these settings here, Files on Demand. Make sure that that's enabled. We always want that. And now keep in mind, Files on Demand only works with Windows 10. I believe it is the October version, which is like 1704, I think. So it's an older version. That's a very old version of Windows 10. However, if you don't see this on your computer, it's probably because you maybe need to upgrade. But by default on Windows 10, we'll call later versions, and on Windows 11, you'll see it on here too. Okay, notifications. Do we want to when sync pauses, or do we want to delete a bunch of stuff? There's a little pop-up on there that says, hey, just so you know, when you delete stuff on your computer locally, it also deletes it to the cloud, so let's be careful. There's a little alert there, that's all. And then automatically pause when on a metered network. This is important. So Microsoft has built-in network. It uses the network card there to see when you are heavily utilized from the network standpoint, when you are downloading things or when you're working with things, and it will actually throttle your OneDrive syncing so it doesn't take over and cause a bad experience. So it kind of teeters back and forth. So any major changes or uploads or anything will happen when the device is not as heavily utilized versus when it is. So it's actually pretty smart in that aspect. And if we come over here to network, we can actually do uploads and downloads. So by default, they're set to don't limit. automatically here in terms of upload, probably a good idea to do it automatically. Since this is just lab here, we're not going to be doing anything major, but if you ever use this in production, it's worth merit, potentially to look at it. We can also, if we come over here to use Office, use the Office application to sync files that I have open. This is a very important one. This is the integration with the Office client. We want to make sure that it's checked, which by default it is. And then the last thing that I want to show, and I've been kind of throwing it on here, which is backup. So by default, this is not turned on. We have to turn it on. And if we say backup files and desktop documents and pictures, we click Manage Backup. And give me just a second here. So I have multiple on my account. So you have to give me just a second. And we'll go ahead and link it. Come on. There we go. So I click Backup here and I get this little thing that says Manage Folder Backup. And it says, will automatically sync to OneDrive, new and existing files to desktop, documents, and pictures. So I'm going to put that out there. I'm going to hit Start Backup. And you'll see immediately over here we had a couple things that popped up. So we're going to start seeing a bunch of stuff on here. And it's probably not the best that I have my desktop syncing, which I don't really care at the end of the day. I'm just going to stop syncing after we're done here with this anyway. But when I'm looking at the desktop, if I open this up here, I got a bunch of stuff that are in here, a bunch of junk stuff. But I also have all of my recordings as well. It's just a bunch of things inside of here. So again, these things I don't particularly care about, but here's the cool part about it. Is that I am now syncing. So any document, anything that gets added to the local computer here automatically gets redirected up to OneDrive. So remember that instance where I said where if somebody is storing things locally on their computer and the computer blows up? Well, guess what? If they're storing things locally on their computer, it's automatically being redirected up to OneDrive. So if we come up here anyway, we will see desktop documents and pictures. So all of this stuff here. Now we got a bunch of things that are being synced up there for right now. I don't particularly care about having that stuff synchronized. So I'm actually going to stop that. So just as easy to do backup, we can stop it as well. Stop backup. We're going to stop the backup. We're going to stop the backup. And we're going to stop backup. Since this is a lab environment, it doesn't make sense necessarily to put stuff on there. So we're going to close that out there for the time being. Okay, cool. So now we have desktop documents and pictures. Remember, we're backing up all of our stuff. All right. Well, obviously I'm not here, but again, if in a production environment, just use your imagination there. Now, here's the cool part about OneDrive that I think is fantastic from a security perspective. Remember, we're taking all of the documents, all of the desktop, and all of the pictures. Why aren't we taking favorites? That's a question I get a lot from my customers. Why aren't we doing favorites? Well, Microsoft is actually recommending that we use Edge now with your signing in, because now your Edge and your favorites are all synchronized up to your Edge profile. So Microsoft is actually kind of unifying all of that to save your favorites to here. So it actually saves up to the Edge. Now I'm just in private here, so it's not that big of a deal, but that's where Microsoft really wants you to go. But why can't we choose other file locations like C drive and such? You should never ever allow users to save to the C drive. That's a bad practice. It never has been a good practice because everything has access to it. Not good. In terms of security, it's also very bad. So with that being said here, desktop documents and pictures are the ones that we've done. We can choose which ones we want. If we don't want maybe the desktop, or maybe we don't want documents or pictures, that's fine. But let's just say we are backing up, and a computer's working in their, or a user's working in their environment. I'm going to give you a real life example here. I had a customer where their CFO was working through things, and he somehow, we don't quite know exactly, probably clicked on something he shouldn't have, but he clicked on something and his computer was completely ransomware. Everything on his device was completely encrypted. Okay, well, that was an easy fix. So my first question was, hey, are you using OneDrive for Business Sync Client? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I was like, okay, well, let's see here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the computer that you have and we're going to wipe it. We're going to destroy all the data on it. We're just going to redo it over again and get you back up and fresh. Not a problem. But he's like, what about all my data? And I was like, don't worry about that. We have this one little feature that is fantastic that is called Restore Your OneDrive. So what we can do is we can take the entirety of our OneDrive, Now keep in mind this was, let's just say, a couple of days ago that he got it encrypted, and we're working through it. And I was like, okay, well, it's very easy. What day did you get it encrypted? He said it was a few days ago. I was like, okay, well, what we're going to do here, we're going to find a date, and we're going to, let's see here, this was 4 days ago, so we're going to go and we're going to restore. And we click restore. So we restored his OneDrive. Now we're going to cancel this because I don't want to restore. So we're going to stop. But we restored his OneDrive back to the day before he was encrypted, and he got the malware and the ransomware put on it. Completely stopped the ransomware in its tracks. Did nothing. It was completely useless because we used version history. That's essentially what that is doing, is using version history to go back and say everything that is of this day here, we're going to version history. Now we can only go back 30 days here as it stands, but that's plenty enough. So the whole point of the restoring your OneDrive there is to say, we don't care about the computers, the actual clients anymore. We want everything to be localized inside of the OneDrive site. That's where we want everything to be. That's easy and that's cool. So at that point there, within, about an hour, because we had to restore and format his computer and reinstall Windows on it. Once we were able to do that, we had him back up and running in no time flat. Probably about an hour, he was back up and running, no data loss. Just a minor inconvenience more than anything. So the cool part about all of this here is that we get a lot of flexibility with this. As an administrator, I could do a lot of different things, but really, as I said, I just showed you the user's experience. I haven't touched anything from an administrator standpoint. That's actually crazy. So one thing I've been beating around the bush on is sharing. So we've talked about sharing internally, and that's fine. But if we want to share outside of the organization, this is where things get a little hairy. So what we do here is we can do an anyone or anonymous link, which potentially may work, but we would do specific people, and we'll do edit. Now I'm going to do my lab environment on here, which is an external. Okay, so actually, you know what? I will do my Gmail account since it's just a junk account. This is an external account. Just a Gmail account. Hey, I want you to come in. I'm going to say you have access to come in. Now, over here on my computer, I'm going to sign in to my Gmail. I'm going to show you what the experience is like. It's actually quite nice. So we log in. I enabled multi-factor authentication on my Google account, so stand by. So we're just waiting for that to come in, which will be there in just a little bit. But what will end up happening here is that there's several things that will end up happening. So this is what's referred to as external collaboration. So this is what Microsoft's really making a big push for, and this is in the aspect of B2B collaboration or B2B users. So what happens here is I send an invite out that says, hey, so-and-so wants to work with you. They want to work together on a task, a budget, whatever it is. Okay, so in this instance here, we've sent out the budget. Still got to wait for it. It has not shown up yet, but we'll get back to it in time here. What happens is I've shared that out, and we can see inside of here, inside the shared aspect, I have several people on here, but you see I have this Matthew Alloway, which, again, if I hover over it, come on. So Matthew Alloway is obviously you see Matt Alloway here. This is my account. I'm the owner of it here, but the Matthew Alloway is my Gmail account. So in that instance there, we could see that, here's the stuff that I've done, that I've added to it. And I would get I don't know why this is just taking forever to come over here. But neither here nor there. We will see it here in some point or fashion, and I'll show you what the experience is. But neither here nor there. The B2B side of things, what ends up happening here, we're going to look at it from the admin side. Okay, so what's, I guess if you look at it here from a top level standpoint, there's actually quite a lot that we need to look at here from a security perspective. It's that easy to be able to share outside of the organization. Well, there's a couple things that we want to potentially look at. Do we want our users to be able to share outside of the organization? So what's stopping them from taking, a super secret document and sharing outside of the organization? Well, there's a lot, of course, we can do, but right off the bat there, as we do from the application side of things, well, maybe we want to kind of protect that. So let's look from the admin side here, and we will check it out from there. So we're going to come over here to the Office, Home. We're going to come to Admin. And while that's loading up, it's going to take just a second here. I'm going to pause this here, and I will be right back because I'm just waiting for the invitation to come in, which I don't know why it's taking so long, but I'm going to wait for that for just a second here before I jump in because it's going to make more sense when I show it to you. So give me just a second here, and I'll be right back. Okay, so that took a little bit longer than I expected, but not a big deal. It was only a couple of minutes. So if we see it on here is that we have, you aren't among the people that the link was created. However, if we want to have access, so this is essentially what happens here. We click it, and now we have access. We were one of the people, so we have it under guest access. So actually it opened it up under Getty, which is interesting. Let's sign out of that real quick. That wasn't what I was expecting there. Okay, well, something just appears to not be nice with my my account here, but neither here nor there. I'm not really all that worried about it. So this is, I guess we'll just do is from the administrator side. It's really all I'm concerned with here anyway. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this budget, and we are going to share this out, but we're going to share this out to somebody else. So we're going to do specific people, hit apply. We're going to do matt@matt.com. So this is an external person, and you can see that, hey, this is outside of the organization. We're going to give them edit access. Fine. So we hit send. So what happens here in this instance, several things happen. I don't know why my Gmail account did not, it was giving me some grief there, but not a big deal. So we come over here, we come to the administrator side, to the admin portal. We come to the admin centers, and we come down and we scroll all the way down. You'll see that we have SharePoint. If you don't have SharePoint, click on all admin centers, and then we come down here to SharePoint. And it'll take us to the SharePoint Admin Center. So why are we on the SharePoint? I guess we have to take the tour here, which is kind of annoying. So why do we come to SharePoint Admin Center? Well, remember, OneDrive is a piece in the back end, so we want to make sure that we have it right. So SharePoint is always in the back end. So if we come over here, we will see, well, lots of different things. So first, let's come over. Before we jump into the SharePoint Admin Center, let's go back to our good old buddy here, the Azure Active Directory. So we come over here to Users. So what's going to happen here is that when I jump in from a user, I just invited matt@matt.com. So matt@matt.com is going to come in as a guest account. Okay, and we will see here that they are, right now everybody's a member user, but when matt@matt.com comes in, they are actually going to be a guest user. Now, a guest user here, we've looked at these already just a little bit when we talked about from the Azure Active Directory side, but I just want to show you here is that when matt@matt.com comes in, they're going to actually look at a user type. Now, I don't own matt@matt.com. That's not a user account that I have or have access to. I just essentially invited somebody, which again, that's fine. It's just a budget, all I've essentially given out there. But I just want to show you when I do that, I actually will, once that person accepts it, they will come in as a guest, okay? So coming in here, we want to look at the admin center, all right? So we come in here and we go to, well, we'll skip over the active sites and the deleted sites for the time being because we're actually going to go to policies. So we're going to open that out and we will see that we have sharing policies. So the sharing policies, this is the first piece that I always talk about with my customers when we're starting to potentially look at how can we secure OneDrive and SharePoint. Because again, by default, how simple is it for me to be able to just come in here, create an anonymous link. Again, I want to share this out here and I want to create an anonymous link. See how easy this is? Anyone with the link? Okay, we click it, copy it, and then we come over here to, another account, I can just be any Joe Schmo, and I have access to it. So I'm just, this is a completely anonymous account. So as you see on here, we have no sign in. I can see that I'm in here, and cool, I guess. That's a bit scary because I can just come in here, again, just come in here and, I don't know, maybe I want to save it as on my local computer, download a copy. Well, I just exfiltrated data. What if this had personal confidential information or something like that on it? There's a lot there that you can do. So this is all something that we want to potentially look at as a security hole, but it is open by default. So I just want you to understand, by default, these things are open, but that doesn't mean that they have to stay open. So we come back to the SharePoint Admin Center. As you can see on here, we have these two slider bars for sharing, SharePoint and OneDrive. So looking at what we have on here, we can take these bars and separate them. So one can have different sharing permissions than others. Now, we have 4 sharing settings. These 2 in the middle here are basically the same. This is essentially allowing us to invite guests, or this is allowing us to share with guests that are already pre-populated. So a group of people or whatever will automatically have guests inside of our organization, and we can only share to those people. So it's like an approved list of people, which I've seen. Then we also have new and existing guests here, which it goes through the invitation process. So I'm allowed to invite new guests. So that's essentially what happened when I did with the Matt at Matt.com. I was able to invite externally with it. Now, there's a lot of things we could do here at the top. This is just anonymous. His share files and folders to links that don't require sign-in. Again, a little bit scary when you think about it. I just demonstrated for you. I just created that anonymous link, and now you can pop, and boom, I'm good. I have full access to this document. I can do whatever I want with it. I can download the copy, and I've just exfiltrated data from the organization. It's a bit scary when you think about it. So we could also do this one down here, which is only people inside of the organization. That is essentially locking it down where I cannot share at all outside of the organization. So what happens in these instances? What do we want to do? Well, there's a lot of things that we want to do here, but a lot of times I always go with OneDrive. Remember, OneDrive is tied to a user account. If that user leaves the organization, that data goes along with it. Now, OneDrive can certainly fit the bill here based off of potentially a gap for FTP, file transfer protocol, and we could potentially use it for that as well. However, what I always recommend doing is I don't ever really recommend using anonymous links for OneDrive. You can go right here, or you could potentially go here, or I see a lot of my customers going down here where they're shutting off the external sharing altogether for OneDrive. That's fine. It really is, but again, you got to be careful with it here, because if we make this too difficult for users to share out, and we just lock everything down and you can't do any sharing outside of the organization at all, well, how are people going to be able to share? There's sometimes legitimate use cases where they need to share. So how do we do it? Well, users are going to find other ways, and we don't ever want to do that. So we can treat SharePoint and OneDrive differently. So here's a cool part about OneDrive and SharePoint is that we can set this to different methods. Okay. So I'm going to do it this way. We're going to do new and existing guests from OneDrive. And SharePoint, we're going to do new and existing. Actually, you know what? We will keep the anonymous on for SharePoint. I'll show you what we can do here. I'm going to just save it just for the time being, just so we can wait a couple minutes for the pieces to go. Now, in this instance here, OneDrive will be shut off, and I am not allowed to create anonymous links for OneDrive. I have to be explicit in all of my sharing. But let's open this up here and just show you a couple different things too. So these top 2, we'll just talk about these first. Limit external sharing by domain. So again, in this instance, if I were to check it, I would have a domain list, a white list of domains that I'm allowed to share out to. Okay, so like only these vendors, approved vendors, are allowed to be shared to. And that means anybody in the organization can share out to these domains. So we're locking it down by domains there, which is one way of doing it. Not a problem. I don't think that's a bad idea. The second one here is also not too bad of an idea as well. Allow users in a specific security group to share externally. So if I'm in this group here, I can share externally, but if I'm not in that group, I cannot share externally. Sharing externally goes literally from any one of these top 3. Okay. So it's essentially for everybody. It's going to be only people in the organization, and it is going to be open for people that are allowed here based off of what we have up here. So that's certainly one way of doing it. But in this instance here, we're going to have new guests come in. And remember, I like having guests come in because we can do things like access reviews. Okay, so we have guests that are members of our teams and guests that are members of different things. We can do these guest access reviews where they will, the users will have the ability to approve or deny, do they still need access and such. So when it comes to OneDrive, I always encourage my users, this is my stance on it. OneDrive should never be used for, again, a very large external collaboration. If I am just saying, hey, I need access to a file and it is too large to send via email, like a video or something like that, use your OneDrive. That's fine. You can use it for that instance if you need to share it outside of the organization. Somebody will get it, download it, or whatever they want to do with it, and then you're done at that point. You don't need access to the share anymore. You just kind of do it and you move on with your life. That's okay. But what we can do here in this instance is, this is what I like, is to be able to share it out for those types of settings. But if we have people that need to collaborate with us, on a ongoing like a vendor or an ongoing basis, that's where SharePoint is coming into play, which is why I do, in certain circumstances, allow anonymous. Okay. Now we can never go like this. I can never go put SharePoint least permissive than OneDrive. So I can have SharePoint more permissive than OneDrive, which we just saw there, but I can never go below it. So in this instance here, we have these two options, which are great to further enhance our security. Sure. Then if I'm inviting guests, we can have these two settings here, which again, this is by default. Guests must sign in using the same account to which guests or to sharing invitations are sent. This is one that you absolutely need to do. This one stops a guest user, which matt@matt.com. I invited matt@matt.com. Matt@matt.com takes the invite, the email invite, forwards it over to matt@yahoo.com. Matt@yahoo.com accepts on matt@matt.com's behalf. We don't want that. We don't want that to happen. However, that is something that is allowed to happen by default, so we always want to make sure that we kind of lock that down. The next piece here is allow guests to share items they own. I always check that off. However, in certain circumstances, if you're a very enabled organization, maybe you want to allow it to happen. But again, I don't see a lot of, again, putting my security hat on, I don't see a lot of use case for it. That's just me, though. Your users should be the only people sharing, not external people. They should only be accessing. That's my 2 cents on it. Now, we also have the ability here where guests' access to a site or OneDrive will automatically expire after a period of time. I'm actually a fan of this here. I normally do about 30 days. So in this instance here, guests, their access is expired after a period of time and they have to be reshared out to. This is a global setting. You can do this on the SharePoint side if you want, but this is a global setting here. So 30 days is fine. 60 days is also not bad. You pick a number and it's fine. They have default of 60. Microsoft does, which again, not a problem there. 60 days, you kind of do your job there. And if you need it, you can also even go out to maybe like 180. So they expire after, and essentially every 6 months it expires and you have to be re-added to it. That's not a bad idea to do it through. And then this verification code. So this really comes along the idea of if I'm inviting and I can't become a guest account. Now we talked about these types of identities and guests before when we were in the Azure Active Directory piece there, but these are people that are not federated, so they're not a Gmail account, they're not a Hotmail account, Outlook account, they don't have a Microsoft 365, they are their own entity. Well, they come in through a verification code, it's a one-time passcode. So if you come in through a verification code, you must re-authenticate after this many days. Now, they have 30 on here. I have some customers who do 1 day. I have some customers who don't have that checked. So it's up to you. So in this instance here, the way we have this saved, we're just going to go ahead and click Save again. The way we have this configured right now is that OneDrive can share out in certain circumstances, but you have to be explicit. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second as we continue through these. So file and folder links here. So by default, this is not stopping me from doing any of these, okay? What this is doing here is this is setting my default. So what I can do here is that if I wanted to, this stops a user from going next, finish, and sharing out the most permissive of data. Okay, so in this instance here, we potentially want to just look at specific people. They have to go out of their way. It's not stopping them from creating links that say only people in the organization or anyone with the link, but it is saying that this is the default. So if they were to next, finish, they can't next finish. They have to type in somebody's name. But if they want to put more permissive, or I guess less permissive, they have to go out of their way to do so. Same concept here is that permission that's selected by default for sharing links. By default, it's set to edit. I set it to view. It's not stopping me from creating it to edit, but it is, I have to go out of my way to do edit. Then inside of SharePoint, since we do have anonymous links enabled, I love expiring anonymous links after 30 days. And you can set the permissions. I'm fine with the permissions and what they have on here, where in terms of folders and files, if somebody shares out a folder with an anonymous link, this is the permission set that they can get: view or view, edit, upload. Files here or view and edit or view. So that's really all around that one there. Then we have these three down here, which I'm really just going to brush over here very, very, very lightly because they're very simple. There's no reason to ever shut them off. Show owners of the names of the people who viewed the files. Of course we want to do that. Let site owners choose to display the names of people who viewed files. Of course we want to do that as well. Short links I'm also a big fan of because our tenant link is on there. But if we go and share out a document or something and we share it out, you're going to see it in there. And we don't necessarily want to expose the entire directory because it could be backwards hacked, if you will. Somebody could go backwards and figure out where these are going. So it is what it is. It's just a way of people being able to kind of crawl. But it's not as frequently utilized nowadays here, but I always still recommend keeping it on there. All right, so we're going to click Save one last time here. And I just want to show you, and we should be good over here in terms of replication. So those settings that we have changed should be okay. But if I come over here to, I'll share out the document here. So we click Share. So as you see on here, people that I specify, we see that can view is on here. I have to go out of my way to edit, and I have to go out of my way to do people inside of the organization. But if you notice up here, I cannot click on any one links. Those anonymous links are gone. So I have to go out of my way here to do people inside of the organization. So again, I'm not stopping people from doing it, but the default sharing is just stopping me from going, share next finish and just having the entirety of my OneDrive shared out with a couple clicks of a button. We don't like to do that. So in that instance there, we've protected our OneDrive and protected our user accounts. But we're still enabling our users through SharePoint. So this is the last piece we're going to talk about on here. We're going to come over here to Active Sites. And you'll see on here that we have sites. We have a marketing site. We have a communication site. We're going to get to those here in time. One's a team site, one's a communication site. We're going to leave it as it is. We're going to create a brand new SharePoint site. And this is going to be a team site. The site name is going to be Project X. So it's available. The group, this is all related to Project X. So I am going to be the group owner. Of course, we're going to keep it in the language here of English. We are going to make it private, so you have to be invited. We are going to change the time zone. I am out of Eastern time zone. And we're going to leave it just as is for right now. We're just going to keep just myself, just one member inside of this group. So now if you come in here, we will see that we have Project X. And if you click on this little link right here, this is the actual URL to that site. So we're going to go ahead and don't worry about this. We'll just hit the X on it for now. We'll just go ahead and hit the X on the sites. So we'll see on here, we're going to get a little bit more into this when we talk about the communication side of things. But if we come up here to the top, we see here's our tenant link, psploi.sharepoint.com/sites/project X. Now, if we come over here, we go to documents. This is where we will see any documents. What does this look very much like? Well, this looks very much like OneDrive. Again, come back to our files here. What does this look like? Well, they look very similar. This is the document library that we're working with. So we want to create a new folder. We'll create a new Word document. Again, what does this all look like? This all looks very similar. So, cool. Now, we have that document created, as you see on here. I'm going to share it out. Again, default sharing experience is still the same. People you specify. Now, in this instance here, we have this shut off. Why? Well, we'll see here in just a little bit. But we'll close that out here for the time being. So, all right. We have a SharePoint site here. We have a document inside of it. What's the difference between the two? Well, they look very similar, and honestly, they work very similar. But in this instance here, we need somebody to have access to this. So I want to give Geddy Lee access to this SharePoint site. So what do? I click on members, I see group members, I can add a group member. I'm going to do G. Lee. I can make them an owner or a member. I'm just going to make them a member. So we're going to hit save. All right, Geddy Lee is now a member of this site, which I hope Geddy Lee is still signed in over here, which looks like he is. I'm just going to copy this URL. It did sign me out. Dang it. So I'll get to sign back in here, so give me just a second. All right, so I'm over here with Geddy Lee. So Geddy Lee can access it in a couple different ways. So we can come over here and we can go to SharePoint. And we will see Geddy Lee's SharePoint feed, if you will. This is your SharePoint start page. So of course you don't have anything there, so I'm like, okay, well that's a little strange. But if I go to My Sites, what do I see in here? Whenever this wants to load up, we will see. Goodness gracious. Well, we will see it under here anyway. So what we're going to do is we just copy that URL and we're just going to go over here and we're going to paste it in there. Now, Geddy Lee by default is a member of this site here, so you see that he immediately shows it under here. I have full access to the site, that if I want to be able to edit things, or if I want to, again, maybe add a workbook in here, I don't have to be given shared access here. I've been given access to the site. So I have access to the documents, everything inside of it automatically. So as I create users and such, I will have the ability to do different things. Now let's just say I want to hit this little star up here, which means I'm following it, which hopefully it will show up here in time. Just got to wait a little bit, I suppose. So we can see up under here. Okay, great. Now if I come over here, you'll notice that I do not have the ability to add members, only view, because I'm a member. Matt, as the site owner, I need to say, hey Matt, can you also add Neil Peart? So Matt just comes in here and he says, yeah, sure, not a problem. I'm going to add a member and I'm going to add N Peart. And I'm going to make him a member. And guess what? He's been added. And it's just that simple. Now I have full access to the site and we can collaborate on this information together. Okay, so let's just say here though, all right, I'm working in this one here and I'm like, man, this is kind of annoying because I don't want to go in through the web interface. Is there a way that I can do this through the OneDrive client? Well, you bet there is. See this little icon up here that says sync? We're going to click on it. We get this little pop-up under here that says it wants to open it up. We're just going to hit OK. Now, in your OneDrive client there, you will see a little pop-up there, and it should say you are now syncing the project. So if we come up here, we should see, bring this over here now, we should see this little icon that's got the little building on it, and it says PSP Alloy. So I open this up here and it says Project X Documents. So now I have the ability to work inside of here, and just as I would normally. Anything that gets saved will automatically synchronize up, and it's really easy to be able to do that. So through this all being said here, now we've gone over a high level here of SharePoint of what we can do. The administrators can come inside of here. We can come up under here and we can edit. So here's some information that we can do. We can see activity, which there's not a whole lot, of course. We can see permissions, so we can see who the site admin is, which is me. Then we can see the site owners, which is a group, Project X owners. And then we have Project X members. We don't see Geddy Lee. We don't see myself in there. Why? Well, because we're members of these groups. That's what it's all about. These are all about groups. If I were to leave the organization, this group, Project X owners and Project X members, would persist. Okay, so if we come here to sharing, we'll talk about sensitivity, but if I want to, I can up this one here and do it to anonymous links. And we can set expiration to different settings. We can override the default things here, is that maybe we'll say, I don't know, well, we can do different things on here. But again, we have full control over this here if we want to override different stuff. So we can do, hey, there we go. We've updated the sharing policies on it. So now Project X, which I hope, there we go. Now I can do anonymous links to this site. So I could do it on a per site basis. So this allows me to be much more secure, and that's from the administrator side would do that. So when I provision these up here, that's what happens. So from a sharing perspective, we've covered SharePoint, we've covered co-authoring, we've covered version history, we've covered the document side of things. There's one last thing that I want to do because this particular video here is getting very long, but a lot of information's inside of here. So the last thing I want to do is go back to the Admin Center, and I want to talk about the OneDrive for Business Sync Client. What's stopping me from going to my personal computer, syncing my OneDrive account and all of my SharePoint sites and just exfiltrating all that data? Well, we can play around with that here. So we come over here to Settings. We will see a bunch of OneDrive things. I'm going to start over here with the sync. Show the sync button on the OneDrive site. I can control that if I want. If I don't want my users to be able to sync their sites, I don't think that's a bad idea. That's my personal opinion. That's a bad idea. I don't like doing that way, but you could if you wanted to block it. I don't think it's a good idea. This right here is the one that we sync computers joined to specific domains. Okay, so this is where I'm going to take my Active Directory domain. I'm going to find the global unique identifier for Active Directory. I'm going to type it in here, and any computer that is not bound to that Active Directory will not be able to synchronize. So my personal computer will not be able to synchronize, but my corporate-owned computer will be able to synchronize. Pretty good. That's a very, very common thing that we do a lot, just to block sharing or syncing from, anonymous computers, if you will. Then we can come over here to block upload of specific file types. We generally put some things in here. One of the things that I always recommend is a PST, and MDB. These two here in particular are very notorious for causing problems inside of OneDrive. PST is for emails, and if you know what a PST is, you'll know that they are evil. If you don't know what a PST is, then that's fine, because hopefully you never have to. MDB is an access database. I'm not the biggest fan of syncing these, because what happens is they don't play well with version history. So a PST is a file that I open up and save email to locally. It's very bad, very, very naughty. But when I do that, it doesn't actually create a version of it because it doesn't know how to. So what it does is it just essentially creates a copy of it. And then every time I do that, it creates a copy and a copy and a copy. And you can completely run away and fill up your hard drive. So these are the two that I always recommend. There's several others that from a security perspective, maybe like EXEs and other things you want to do, but that's up to you. So with that kind of the sync settings there, let's look at a couple of these other settings. Storage limit, this one's easy. This is the default one for everybody. You can change this per user. This is the tenant one. We can go up to, as it says, 5 terabytes. Tremendous amount of data. Never ever recommend doing that. Always keep it at the default. Retention, I'm going to skip over that just for the time being here, but notifications, this is just a Boolean here. It's either true or false. Allow notifications. That's if somebody is sharing out, somebody has shared off. Do we want the users to be able to see this information? Well, yes, always want to. Finally, coming over here to retention, this is the last piece that I'm going to end this lecture on. Retention is not retention of data, but for the OneDrive account. Remember, when a OneDrive is deleted, a user account goes along with it, or excuse me, when a user account is deleted, the OneDrive goes along with it. So what do we want to do here? Well, a lot of times users do have data inside of their OneDrive that we need to get off and move to a different location. Okay, they leave the organization and we, close it out. What do we want to do with it there? Well, what we do here is we can, and this is all automated, which is why this is fantastic. User leaves the organization, their account from Azure Active Directory is deleted. SharePoint in the back end will automatically look at who their manager is in Active Directory and assign that person as an owner of the SharePoint, the back end, the OneDrive SharePoint site. And what happens there is they have access to it for 30 days or whatever we want to do on here. They'll have access to the data where they can take it and move it to a location that'll stick around. And then the OneDrive will just go about its disposition process, which will eventually go away. So we can take that data out of there and move it, and the user will have access to it for 30 days. I always recommend going as low as possible. And the reason why is because the longer you wait for this, if you go up to the 10-year mark, the user is going to forget about it. The manager is going to forget about it, and they're not going to remember till it's too late to get the data off of there. The quicker, the better, so they remember to get the data out of there so they don't have to worry about it. Just get in there, get the data out of there, and move on with it. This is all automated here, so we don't have to touch this from IT's perspective here. This is a fantastic little tool here that allows us to take our user deprovisioning process and make it a little bit easier now. So we can automatically assign people permissions when the person leaves the organization. Alrighty, that is about it from the SharePoint side of things. There's been a lot. Obviously, there's a lot more to cover here, but I think we're good from a collaboration standpoint. We've covered OneDrive, we've covered SharePoint, we covered the sync client, we covered also the sharing settings. And the difference between the two here is, again, as we see, we have user accounts. And then if we come over here to Azure Active Directory, we should see now we have groups. So we see Project X is in here now as well. That's a Microsoft 365 group. This is based off of the SharePoint site that we created. As you see on here, we have members of this group are these 3 users. So when we add people to the SharePoint site, they have access to the entirety of the SharePoint site. If they were to leave, they're just removed from the group. That's it. OneDrive goes with a user and it leaves as they leave. So it's very important to understand the difference between the two. With that being said, that closes up here this particular lab. We're going to jump into communications next, and then we're going to start talking about Teams. We're going to shift gears over to Teams. But with that being said, we are done with this particular lab. We're going to jump into SharePoint communications. Thank you for your time on this one, and I'll see you on the next one.